Let's be honest. Shopping, not my thing. I go to the store. There's a lot of people there. It's just not my thing. It's not football. All right. I spend way too long scrolling websites just looking for something simple like a nice pair of jeans. And I'm either overwhelmed by all the choices or can't find anything my style and end up with stuff that doesn't fit and doesn't work. That's why I use Stitch Fix. You just take a quick style quiz, share your size, your vibe, and your budget, and boom, you're matched with a real human stylists who handle the rest. They take care of the work for you. They send you a fix box with clothes that actually fit and make sense for your life, work, weekends, whatever. It saves you time. You look great, and you don't even have to think about it. That's the best part. It's no risk, all style. Try it all on in the comfort of your home. Keep what works, send back the rest. Free shipping and returns, always, and no subscription required. Plus, get a free try-on for your first fix. Get started today at stitchfix.com/podcast to get $20 off your first order, and they'll waive your styling fee. That's stitchfix.com/podcast.
Listen, life's all about leveling up. Whether you're handling business on the field or kicking it in your zone, you like to celebrate with cigars that match the moment. That's why you should link up with Famous Cigars to bring you a wild deal. Right now, you can grab 8 premium cigars for just $8. You heard that right. 8 top-rated cigars at $1 a stick. Top quality brands like Oliva, Romeo y Julieta, and Davidoff. Handpicked just for you and worth over $80. Hit up famouscigars.com/cam and lock in this exclusive deal. While you're there, check out their insane selection of premium cigars, all shipped fresh and fast from their massive 20,000 square foot humidor. That's half a football field. Famous Cigars has been in the game since 1939 and still family owned. So celebrate every win with the folks at Famous. 8 cigars for $8. famouscigars.com/cam.
The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. We are back after the longest break that we've taken in weeks. Sam, my name is Mike. I'm here with Sam. We're finally going to preview the Western Conference Finals now that we know who the Phoenix Suns are playing. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm feeling great. My Phoenix Suns, our Phoenix Suns, are not only in the Western Conference Finals, Mike, which we've known for a little while, they are, by the books, favorites to win the title.
Yeah.
Which
Isn't that weird?
It's really weird. I almost don't know. Like, I don't even want to think about the finals yet. This episode is about the Clippers. We're talking exclusively about the Clippers. But I saw that yesterday on a couple of different, advanced stats sites and Vegas odds makers. And yeah, we're really there. We're really there. And this week has felt like a very long time without Suns basketball. I'm glad that the players are well rested, maybe with the exception of one key guy who we should talk about right off the bat because we haven't had a chance to address it yet via pod. But yeah, I'm ready. This is going to be an awesome series, I think.
Yeah, so on this episode, Sam and I are going to go over what we've considered the biggest questions facing this series. So I came up with mine, he came up with his. I'm sure there will be some overlap. So we're going to get into that in detail. I want to ask you just quickly, do you have any thoughts? I know this is a weird time to do it, but I figured we have to mention it because it's news. Do you have any thoughts on the idea that Devin Booker's going to the Olympics this summer?
Oh, yeah. I think it's great for him. I'm happy to see him there, especially after he's put so much hard work in. I'm sure it's like the least of what he's thinking about right now, though.
Yeah.
And also, like, yeah, my approach to it, I was saying on Twitter yesterday, like, Americans and how they feel. I enjoy watching the Olympics, but not in like a go USA, America's the best kind of way. Like, I don't feel that much patriotism towards it. I just kind of feel like the U.S. should win every time. And honestly, if they don't, it's not a big deal to me. So it's kind of like, yeah, go have fun. I will definitely tune into the games. Maybe play only like 20 minutes a game and don't overdo it. And, then come back, enjoy the rest of the short offseason you'll have, get some rest, maybe go on vacation, whatever, come back in time for training camp. It's going to be really tough on those guys' bodies. I know Booker's in it. Some guys who either weren't in the playoffs or were bounced early, Damian Lillard, Jason Tatum, Draymond Green have all committed. I'm sure I'm missing a couple names. But yeah, Team USA putting together a formidable squad as they always do. So it should be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. If anything, it gives you and I something to talk about this summer.
I really
we
feel
can watch those games.
Absolutely, we'll have something to talk about this summer, other than like what should we spend our MLE on for free agency. But I really feel bad though, as the NBA gets more and more international. I know this isn't related to Booker, but international guys come through the Suns all the time. It's hard on those guys. Jokic put out a message saying that he was not playing for Serbia this year because it's just the toll is too much on his body. And I don't know if you saw the reaction to that on social media, but like this was Twitter. This, is a primarily English-speaking app at the end of the day. And the Serbian fans came out in force, being like, this guy's a joke. He's letting his whole country down. And it's like, I can't feel that way towards Team USA. I think it's an honor for Book to be selected. But for some of these other guys who really just have to go through a long slog, go through the playoffs, and then like be the face of their country's presence in the Olympics, it's really tough. So, yeah.
Jokic looked exhausted in that Denver series, so I don't blame him. I think I'm excited about it. I don't really have a take on it because it just feels so secondary to what's about to happen.
Right.
Chris Paul also made, I think, second team All-NBA. Which is pretty cool too. I don't know. I don't really have any thoughts other than that's pretty cool. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'll just say it's exactly how I expected it to go down. Chris Paul, second team All-NBA. Booker missed. I think the more, how should I say, disrespectful thing is not that Booker missed, because I was kind of expecting him not to make the cutoff, but some of the other guys who were ahead of him, it was like, wasn't Westbrook ahead of him in votes? It was weird. It was weird. But yeah, I'm not gonna belabor the point there. We're in the Western Conference Finals. Like, what is there to be mad about, really?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not really mad about it either. I think when it comes to the guards, I think a reputation. Those guys are good that made it over Devin Booker. Those guys are really, really good. But reputation also matters too. I think like Kawhi, for example, getting in, even though he missed a lot of games this last season, is an example of reputation mattering a lot.
Or
not to say that he's not good and even better than Devin Booker in a lot of ways.
And not just that, like Kawhi also made all defense, totally coasting off reputation. I know a lot of people focused in on Matisse Thybulle. I think Kawhi's the guy who stole a spot from Mikal Bridges on that all-defense team, too. So it's just like reputation matters a ton with these voters. The Suns making the playoff run they're making right now, they have a really good chance here in this series. Even if they don't make it out of the Western Conference Finals, though, so many national guys have seen exponentially more Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges than they ever have before. So we're building narratives about these guys right now that are going to persist for years, too.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's get into it. Let's get into the Clippers series. It starts right now. Sam, you and I are looking at it. It's 9:30 Arizona time, 9:50 Arizona time, actually. We're just over 24 hours away from this series starting. Not a lot of time for you and I to get this podcast out, but in a way, I think you and I have been previewing this series for months because we were just talking about this matchup as one of the more interesting and difficult matchups for the Suns. Things have changed since then, and that we have to talk about. And I think we're going to get into questions. You and I will shoot some questions back and forth, but I'll just start with this first question of mine because it's news and we have to get into it. My first question is, when will Chris Paul or Kawhi Leonard return to the lineups for these teams? As we're recording this right now, there's a possibility that some news about Chris Paul will come out. I'm not sure.
Just our luck if it does.
Yeah, my initial expectation is he's going to miss one game at least. I think that there's a possibility that he'll miss 2 games, just based on what I've heard and what I believe to be the situation there. Kawhi Leonard has an ACL injury. They have not clarified whether or not that's a tear from what I've seen. And I have a feeling he's just not going to return. I even am slightly suspicious that they're not saying something because he is a free agent this offseason, and they're really They're being careful with
This
the news,
is
though, let's say.
This is a ridiculous comparison in terms of the players on the court, but just stay with me for a second. Isn't it kind of like Abdul Nader for the Suns being out like initially in January
Sore knee.
with
Yeah.
knee soreness as the official description for why he was out, and now he has still not played with the team since then. Like, for all we know, he could have torn his ACL and this team still didn't tell us. I'm not saying that's what's going on. We're dealing with speculation, but I will just say my initial impression of these two guys, it's exactly where we need to start because it's going to define so much about the series. I am not expecting Kawhi Leonard to play at all in this series. If he does, it would be a shock to me. And so everything else I'm going to say today, that this sort of strategic stuff we're going to get into, is going to be based on the notion that Kawhi's not going to return. Chris Paul is still really important to what the Suns do. I'm prepared for him to miss up to 2 or 3 games. I think it would be pretty shocking to me if he missed more than that. But if he only misses 1 or even 2, I'm going to feel a lot more confident than like if he has to miss 3, that's a long time. So we'll see. You know, if Chris Paul only misses 2 games, we were actually saying this before we started recording officially. If Chris Paul only misses 2 games, you just need to split it. And then you get a healthy Chris Paul back, and then you're winning a best of 5 at that point. I think you can do that. But
take one of the first 2. The Suns have home court advantage. Take one of the first 2 home games here. I mean, ideally, obviously, you win 2 if he misses both of those games. Both teams are at a disadvantage when it comes to injuries, but one of them is more likely to return than the other. So then maybe you take one of the ones in LA, you come back with home court advantage. Very similar to what happened with the last time the Suns played an LA team in the playoffs. That would be your hope.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest question. It's tough because I think there's just not a ton of analysis here. Now, we will get into, I'm sure some of our questions here will get into what will happen beyond that, like who becomes a bigger X factor if Chris Paul is out. Obvious answers for the Suns there, the guy starting. And we'll get into what that means, but I think it's just important to know that we don't know what's going on with Chris Paul. Maybe there will be more news today. Hopefully it's good news. Maybe they'll say he'll be back tomorrow for game 1. I have my doubts, at least for that one game, and then hopefully at least game 2 for those home court fans that bought tickets to game 2.
Chris Paul being available for game 1 changes so much, dude.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, my confidence level shoots up to like 99% at that point because he just does so much for the Suns and making their offense dynamic. But yeah, I mean, that's basically it for the speculative portion of this episode, right?
Yeah, and I think he was so unbelievable against the Denver Nuggets that it's just so important for him to come back. It's very important.
Just had an all-time... I know we had to kind of let that series sit for a while. We never got to come back after. Like, we didn't do an additional episode this week after the immediate reactions to winning that series. But, like, just a week later, I can still say that was like an all-time performance by Chris Paul. He was so good in that series. So, we need that guy. Can I move on to my first question?
Yeah.
I guarantee, like we said, a lot of these questions are going to be the same because it's just obvious stuff. But DeAndre Ayton, how will he handle the small ball challenge that the LA Clippers present? You want to talk about it?
Yes, I have 2 questions that are related to that, and my I'll go over my first one that's more related to him because I think the other one is more about switches. But my question was, can DeAndre Ayton stay on the court / who does he guard? I think is the important part. And I pulled a stat. I have stats for all of these. Here's one that I think is interesting. The Suns are last in offensive rebounds in the playoffs. Did you know that?
I did not know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, last for offensive rebounds in the playoffs. 6th in rebounds, so they are getting rebounds. But they have not really attacked those offensive boards. Now, it should be said that one of the reasons they're last in offensive rebounds is matchups, right? They played a team with 2 bigs in LA in round 1 and then Jokic in round 2. So, you were really battling with some really good bigs in those series, but they were still last. They did not really capitalize in offensive rebounds. And I think offensive rebounds are going to be a big factor in this series because, once again, the Clippers are going to switch everything, and I'm going to get into that more because I have some interesting stats for that, and I'll do that next. But when they switch, no matter who's attacking the switch, in a lot of ways, that ends up with a smaller guy on Ayton. And whether or not they punish it by giving the ball to Ayton, that offensive rebound is going to be the second thing that happens there because that means a smaller guy is going to be matched up against DeAndre Ayton under the rim, regardless of who shoots the ball. And he needs to really lock in on those offensive rebounds. We can't be last in offensive rebounds after this series.
I think it's really important. Are we just talking about switches now? Can I dive into it?
Yeah, and I can say it too because my question that's related to switches is can Devin Booker beat switches or Ayton? But
Yeah.
I think Devin Booker is an important one. But stay on Ayton for now, and then we'll jump into Booker.
Yeah, we'll jump into Booker next. I really need to talk about Ayton first because I think I'm already seeing the takes line up from Suns fans, and I think this is a very natural reaction. You see that they're going to play, we don't know exactly who it's going to be, but you see that they're going to play someone who's like 6'6", 6'7", 6'8". Terrence Mann, Batum, Marcus Morris is going to match up against DeAndre Ayton. They do play Zubats in a little bit more of a traditional drop roll. Sometimes they show him at the level of the screen, but Zubats, credit to Ty Lue, I'll talk about this more later, is not playing that much anymore. He's playing like 10, 15 minutes per game. The rest of the time, the Clippers are going small. That's the majority of the game. So for Ayton, there's this temptation for Suns fans that you're seeing of, Ayton's got a 6-inch height advantage, a 50-pound weight advantage at these guys. He should just go right at them, and he should have no problem scoring 20, 25 points like he did against the Lakers. That is not exactly going to happen. and I think it's absolutely true that Ayton can have a great series. He could even score a lot of points. But you need to look at what the Clippers just did against the Jazz. Rudy Gobert and DeAndre Ayton are different players. Ayton is a lot more polished in some certain areas. I think he's got better hands. He's a little bit more mobile, agile than Gobert. But what all Suns fans, no matter how much you hate Rudy Gobert, should be able to agree with me at the end of the day is that DeAndre Ayton's offensive role this season for the Phoenix Suns was very, very similar to Rudy Gobert's offensive role for the Utah Jazz. Where are these guys scoring the vast majority of their points? In the pick and roll. So once you switch, and if you were watching the Jazz-Clippers series, no doubt you saw this, if the Clippers are switching every action, maybe once, maybe twice, like every once in a while, Gobert's going to be able to kind of slip that screen, and they were able to throw a lob to him, but it really wasn't happening all that often. They were able to mostly neutralize Rudy Gobert's offense, take him out of the pick and roll, because they just switched those actions, those screens instantly, and the Jazz were not making that pass, right?
Can I just add to that they don't make that pass. They don't trust him in that scenario.
Sure. But to that point, I don't believe the Suns have not played a defense. Let's start here. The Suns have not played a defense this switch heavy all playoffs. When they were playing defenses this switch heavy in the regular season, I'll remind you, we often said the same thing about Ayton. We often said, and it has nothing to do with Ayton's talent level versus Gobert, but we often said, why isn't Devin Booker making that pass to Ayton? Why isn't Chris Paul making that pass to Ayton? In those situations, in the regular season, they didn't always trust him. So why am I saying this? I'm saying this because I think what Suns fans need to prepare themselves for right off the bat in this series is that 50%, maybe even more, of Ayton's pick and roll game, unless there are serious breakdowns in what the Clippers are doing, is going to be gone from the get-go. He needs to find much more interesting ways to score, and I've outlined a few here. Like, there's potential for DeAndre Ayton to have a 20-point-per-game series and have a dominant impact on offense, but it's not going to come so much through the pick and roll like it usually does. So do you have anything you want to add there first, or should I go right into what I've outlined as those things? Yes.
DeAndre Ayton probably shot in the Lakers series 78% from the floor, something like that. I don't know. I'm just throwing a number out there. It was between 70 and 80%, I think, by the end of that series. Currently in the playoffs, he's shooting 37% on post-ups. And that's 0.67 points per possessions. He's just not killing those post-ups in the playoffs so far. Now, he's posting up big guys, and that number will likely change if he's posting up Terrence Mann. But it's just a reminder that to utilize DeAndre Ayton in the right ways, post-ups are not quite where he's the most efficient so far. And I think the playoffs shows that in a lot of ways. So DeAndre Ayton, I think when he does get the ball, when they do post up, it's not going to be in the half court. It's more likely going to be in transition. If he can get out and run in transition and then force some sort of cross match in transition, then they can get the ball to him quickly, and he could just bury that guy under the basket. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah. So
if they're switching every possession and DeAndre Ayton has a small guy on him and they have to get past that first line of defense in order to get him the ball, I don't think that's going to work.
So you just hit on my first point. Transition is going to be huge for the Suns in this series, especially huge for a couple guys, but especially DeAndre Ayton. The Suns DeAndre Ayton's offense in this series almost needs to resemble a 7 seconds or less of sorts. That doesn't mean like exactly 7 seconds or less like we think of it in In the past, we know Chris Paul is he's still going to want to, slowly kind of saunter up the court when he is playing, get the Suns into their usual sets. You don't want to run the entire offense through DeAndre Ayton, but this is a series where you need to run. Ayton has a chance to have a great series if he is consistently imposing his force on the Clippers by running out in transition early in the shot clock, those first 7 to 10 seconds. We saw him do this in the Lakers series. I just posted a clip on Twitter like 20 minutes ago because this is so important for him. He needs to quickly get down the floor, seal off a small guy, doesn't matter who it is. It could be Batum, could be Morris, could be a man, really doesn't matter, and look to score with that hook shot, which is pretty good of his, in the first 7 to 10 seconds of the shot clock. Because if you're doing that, you're not allowing the Clippers defense to get set. And once they get set, even though they're small, they're really good. They've got the reason they've come this far is because they've got great help team defenders at basically every position. Guys who can come over to Ayton if you just try to give him the ball in the post, even if he has that mismatch, and I promise it will work sometimes, but they also have guys who will stunt, who will dig at him, who will come over and double him even. They'll make him regret putting the ball down. If he even puts the ball down for a second, they'll swipe at it. They can force some turnovers. It's going to be hard for Ayton if you're just dumping the ball into him in the post with 7 seconds left on the shot clock. So what he needs to do is he is going to be blessed in this series in a way that he hasn't been up till now in the playoffs. Up till now, Ayton has had to do everything for the Suns on defense. He's had to expend an incredible amount of energy banging bodies with Jokic and with Andre Drummond and Anthony Davis. He doesn't have to do that in this series. He's going to still play an important role on defense, but the lost energy value isn't quite the same. He needs to come around and turn some of that into sort of an explosive offensive performance where he's running the floor hard, creating transition opportunities for the Suns, sealing off bodies, and above all, scoring before the Clippers defense gets set, because this is the critical point. If you allow the Clippers defense to get set, things become exponentially harder. The Suns still have options. They still have ways to score in their half-court offense, but most of the ways that the Suns will be scoring, if you let the Clippers get set, don't include DeAndre Ayton. So for Ayton, most importantly, if he wants to have a good offensive series, he needs to get out and run. His conditioning needs to be on point. And yeah, absolutely, he needs to do those things.
Yes, and I just want to reiterate it again. Offensive rebounds are going to be vital. He's done well in the playoffs at times, but it's going to be a different matchup. I'll say it again. It's not going to be Jokic boxing him out. It's not going to be even Gobert, what it could have been, boxing him out. And it's not going to be Andre Drummond, one of the greatest rebounders of all time, boxing him out. It's going to be completely different in this series. It's going to be a smaller guy boxing him out most of the time unless they get desperate and put Zubac in, which, by the way, they could even start with Zubac. We don't know exactly what they're going to do in this series. They have not done that in a long time, so I doubt that they're going to do that. But if they do that, I think that's really good for the Suns. I think there might be an element of maybe they start with Zubac if Chris Paul is out, because maybe the Suns can't punish the drop exactly the same way as when Chris Paul is in, and maybe they switch it up if Chris Paul comes back. That might be a thing. But when you understand how difficult it is to make passes, how difficult it is to utilize the screens, that means that it's going to be tough to get him the ball. When switches neutralize screens, that's really the thing that happens here, and that's something that DeAndre Ayton provides to the offense very, very well. That means getting him the ball is going to be really difficult. It's in a lot of ways, I think this is going to be a low-scoring series on both sides of the ball because the switches are something the Suns have struggled with, and the Clippers have not yet faced a defense at the level of the Suns in the playoffs so far, and obviously no Kawhi Leonard on their end, and even for the Suns, no Chris Paul, at least likely for Game 1, maybe Game 2. So I think offensive rebounds are vital for him, and because what's important about that is understanding that it's vital, because if he's not going to get the ball as much as he did, like the Lakers series, obviously it's going to be completely different, then it's important for him to say, go and find ways to get it himself, and that's I mean, it's going to be a huge advantage. The Suns should have a huge rebounding advantage in this series, and a lot of that falls on DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah, we need him to exploit his physicality for good in this series. So just to recap, get out and run, steal off guys, score early in the shot clock, dominate on the offensive glass, and also, you can give him some post touches. He just needs to make quick decisive reads out of the post. It can't be a
Yes, they're gonna
go-to
double.
form of offense because they're going to double. Exactly. But this is a series, like we were worried all series, and I guess this is maybe where we should transition the question as we kind of come out of the Ayton conversation. We were worried all of last series and the one before that about Ayton getting in foul trouble. I'm not super worried about that now. You know, I don't want them to call fouls, getting the bonus, but if Ayton gets in foul trouble, you know, goes over the back a couple times, not a big deal, because you know what? We have a way to match what the Clippers are doing if they go small in a way that actually makes me feel really confident, and that's Torrey Craig. I have faith in Ayton to be able to stay on the floor in this series. To your first point, the very first question you brought up, will Ayton be played off the floor? I think the answer is no. But theoretically, if he is kind of getting played off the floor and it's really not working, you can bring in Torrey Craig, or if he gets in foul trouble, and the Suns can match exactly what the Clippers are doing, small ball versus small ball, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad look for us if that happens.
Yeah, I think my concern about Ayton staying on the court is not offensively. I think the Suns will find ways to do things offensively that they'll be fine with. I think the worry for me in a lot of ways is just what the Clippers are going to do is they're going to match up DeAndre Ayton with someone just standing in the corner, pull him as far away from the paint as possible, try to neutralize his help defense in a lot of ways. And I'm concerned with that. And I'm going to get more into that later because I think there's something interesting that the Suns are going to be facing in this series that's specific to that. But to go back to the switches and how the Clippers are going to guard the Suns, my question is, can Devin Booker specifically beat switches? Or Ayton, right? Or Chris Paul or Mikal Bridges or whoever. But I think the biggest concern there is Devin Booker, especially without Chris Paul to start this. I have a couple of stats I want to go through on this one. The Suns as a whole are the best isolation team left in the playoffs by points per possession. They're currently over Brooklyn, and they're at 1.23 points per possession, but they're bottom 3 in frequency. So this is huge. Brooklyn isolates so much more than the Suns, and the Suns clearly want to avoid isolating as much as possible because really they only have 2 guys that can do it. 3 guys, technically, if you include Cameron Payne in that category. But they don't want to do it. They really just don't want to do it. Now, they have been pretty good at it in the playoffs, and I think a big part of that is targeting the right guys on defense for the other team. Devin Booker in the playoffs is shooting 1.32 points per possession on isolations. Yeah, 50% from the field in the 97th percentile of all players in the playoffs. And if you take out some of the players who are no longer in the playoffs, it's even higher, right? This is including players that are eliminated, players like Damian Lillard, but only 13% of his possessions have been in isolations. It's actually the best on the Suns. I think people would have expected that it would have been Chris Paul, who's at 1.2 points per possession. Here's a crazy stat, by the way. Cameron Payne, did you see this stat?
I didn't look for his.
He's shooting on isolations in the playoffs 100% from the field.
Okay, on how many shots?
Very few.
Yeah.
2 points per possession. So it's a reason to ignore that stat entirely.
Yeah.
With Cameron Payne, but I think it's still indicative of a small thing that he only isolates, he only attacks when he has the right mismatch. He doesn't do things stupidly. He's not constantly isolating in order to reduce that field goal percentage. He understands when he has the right one, which includes apparently LeBron James, which he did multiple times. Isolating is going to be important in this series for multiple reasons. One, they're going to switch. That means they're going to likely try to play Devin Booker straight up. They don't want to double in most of these cases. We've seen teams try to trap Devin Booker over and over and over again in these first 2 series. I'd say that's likely going to stop, except for the possibility of Chris Paul being out. Maybe they'll try to trap in those scenarios. I think they're mostly going to switch on everything, and that means isolating. That means Devin Booker specifically has to score efficiently on those isolations, but the other thing he has to do is force them to double. Force them to send a second guy at him, possibly without using a screen, which is one of the more difficult things to do in the NBA. If you can get a second guy on Devin Booker, specifically past the three-point line if he's penetrating, then you can do the Phoenix Suns basketball thing, which is get the ball moving on the perimeter, find the right cutter, find the right shooter, and score efficiently in that ways. That means getting past that first line of defense without it. And I think it's going to be interesting to see who they try to get on him on the perimeter, whether it be Nick Batum, right? Which I think in a lot of cases that will happen because they're probably going to put Batum on Ayton, and Ayton's going to be the screener. Or maybe he tries to just attack a smaller guy like Patrick Beverley. If Patrick Beverley's on the floor and tries to really play with fire a little bit there, he's done a good job of that in the past. But I think Devin Booker and what he does against the switches is going to be the most important thing in this series.
Yep. When teams go to these switch-heavy schemes, that's when superstars really become so important. They're always important, but whereas other teams have tried to take the ball out of Devin Booker's hands, and to the second half of what you were saying, the Clippers might do that if Chris Paul isn't playing. If Chris Paul is playing, they're definitely just going to switch straight up. I don't think they're going to trap him at all. And that's when you just need to hit big shots, and you need your top guys to hit bigger shots more frequently than the other team's top guys. It really is as simple as that when teams are switching. So I think it's important to note also Paul George here is in the 55th percentile in ISO efficiency in the playoffs. In the regular season, he was in the 86th percentile, so another good ISO player. Booker's just going to have to match his offense. 97th percentile for him in the playoffs is insane. We have never seen Devin Booker play at that level of ISO efficiency over an extended period of time. So if he can keep that up, your confidence should be at just a really high level that the Suns get by in this series.
He's been insanely impressive at doing it in the playoffs so far, but they have yet to face a team that I think can challenge him in the way the Clippers can, and that's even without Kawhi Leonard. Obviously, with Kawhi Leonard, it becomes a whole different level. So if Kawhi comes back, that's a whole different thing. But even without him, just having a bunch of 6'6" to 6'8" guys that can switch on to him on the perimeter, guys that he doesn't necessarily have a strength advantage over, that's a huge thing for him. So it's important for him to take care of the ball on those, and it's important for him to get by them on that second line of defense. Now, something, too, that the Suns have to do, and I plugged it this morning, but we had a podcast in the past that talked about the types of plays that the Suns can run to attack switches. This is a big thing on Monty. I've been insanely impressed with this Suns, how prepared they were to attack different kinds of defenses so far in the playoffs. But the way they need to disguise their sets, ghost screens, double drags, pin downs, things like that, in order to attack switches and confuse the switches as much as possible, it's one of the most difficult things to do in the NBA. The Suns have been insanely prepared at everything that they've done so far in the playoffs, so I'm really confident that they're going to be able to do that. But this is, I think, why it's important to really try to at least take one of these first two games without Chris Paul, but specifically try to win both of these first games. Obviously, you want to win both at all times. You want to win every game you play. Mm-hmm. But as the series goes along, the Clippers are going to start recognizing the way that the Suns are going to disguise their sets, and then it's going to become even more of a rock fight as it goes along. So winning these first two games, when the Suns have an advantage of disguising things, of a little bit of trickery within what they're doing, would be really huge for the Suns, I think.
Just to remind people of what ghost screens are, if you didn't listen to that episode, as a matter of fact, a lot more of you listen to these episodes now than a random episode in February, so a little lesson. That ghost screens are where a guy will come up, usually kind of from the, where would you say it is, Mike? From
the wing
not
or the
quite
corner.
The corner, but that middle area between the corner and the wing, and at least the way the Suns use it, they'll come up and fake as if they're going to set a ball screen, but then they'll kind of curve off and
sprint.
Like sprints, like with an L cut or a J cut or something, usually towards the opposite wing. The guys who most frequently do this for the Suns is it needs to be someone who the threat of the off-screen shooting is kind of there. So it's been Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson. This isn't
Jay Crowder.
Jay Crowder to an extent as well. I would argue he's a little bit less good at executing on it, but he definitely does.
But he does it a lot. Yeah.
This isn't something, for example, just like you can't do this with Torrey Craig, because if Torrey Craig does this, no one's going to respect his shot if he runs out to the opposite wing, and like you're hoping you confuse the switch and get an open outlet pass to a guy on the wing. But if it's Torrey Craig, no one cares. So these are examples of stuff where Cam Johnson leveraging this, Mikal Bridges leveraging this, those two are going to be really important, I think, with the way they move off the ball. That's going to be key to the Suns kind of scrambling what the Clippers do a little bit.
It's important to point out that it's not centers that do it.
No.
But what will dictate who does it, because it could be any of those guys, is who is guarding them. It's all about that. If they put a smaller guy on Torrey Craig, he's going to do it too. In fact, there was a series of plays in the regular season where they just ran a Torrey Craig ghost screen for Chris Paul like 4 or 5 times in a row, and the Suns, I forget who it was that they were playing, just buried them with that over and over and over again. And part of that is when Torrey Craig sprints out to the wing, if they're late on that rotation, he can attack that rotation, right? He's not necessarily going to shoot it every time. He can catch it and go to the rim. So any one of the Suns' wing players can do it, including Devin Booker, including Chris Paul. They're not always going to catch it and shoot it at that point. But I think in this specific series, when you have switching on every possession, it's going to be interesting because, like Saric, for example, you think Monty is willing to put Saric in the position to post up and make decisions when they start doubling him on the post, because he's been relatively good at times this season punishing a mismatch in the post and has done pretty well at finding shooters at times, but there are also times where he doesn't. And you know, like, does he automatically go to a small lineup to match the Clippers? Is Zubac playing the majority of those bench minutes? So you have to put, do you have to put Saric in? It's going to be really interesting.
No,
to see
it really just depends on what Ty Lue does. If the Clippers play like they have been and Zubac is the backup center, is giving you like 15 minutes, then Saric is going to be your first option to match. If Zubac comes out and starts, then that opens up the entire bench unit possibility of bringing in Torrey Craig for like an additional 5 or 10 minutes at the 5. We really don't know. That's just a question I think we won't know the answer to until game 1.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see Mikal get back to some cutting in this series as well, because confusing their defense as much as possible, forcing them to make decisions is going to be big in this series.
A massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, especially these days. 8 different settings, adjustable intensity, plus it's heated, and it just feels so good. Yes, a massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, but when it can come with a car, suddenly it seems quite practical. The all-new 2025 Volkswagen Tiguan, packed with premium features like available massaging front seats, it only feels extravagant.
This episode is brought to you by Ro. Confidence is everything. Women can sense it, and trust me, they love it. But if you're in your head worried about performance, that swag, unfortunately, gentlemen, it's gone. Ro Sparks keeps you ready. When the moment hits, you can step up like a superhero and handle your business. No doubt, just confidence.
Fellas, Ro Sparks gets you ready fast, dissolving under your tongue and working in 15 minutes on average. No waiting, no missing the moment, plus it stays active up to 36 hours.
So when the mood hits, you can go back to back to back, round after round after round. Ro connects guys with medical provider 100% online, so there's no awkward conversation with in-person providers. Go to ro.com/sparks to see if you qualify. If prescribed, new sexual health patients gets $15 off Sparks on reoccurring plan. Connect with the provider at ro.co/fourth to find out if prescriptions Ro Sparks are right for you. That's ro.co/fourth for $15 off your first order. If approved, treatment ships directly to their door. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, and or manufacturing review. For full safety information, go to ro.co/safety info.
What's your next question?
All these questions are kind of related if you think about it, but I do want to bring this up more specifically. How much food is there going to be for the Suns to target on the court in the way that we did? Our friend David Nash, who wrote that phenomenal newsletter about how the Suns targeted Michael Porter Jr., I think a lot of people got enjoyment out of that, and a lot of people noticed that just right off the bat. They were like, hey, they're going at this guy every time. There are guys like that on the Clippers roster too. The question is, where are we going to find the chances to exploit that? Because we know the Suns, when they are fully healthy, when they have Chris Paul and Devin Booker, can be merciless. The two names here are Luke Kennard and Zubac. I want to give credit, before I even get into those two guys, of Ty Lue. The Clippers are here for a reason. Also, let me dispel with a rumor real quick. Here's a side note, because this is a rumor that's swirling around Suns Twitter, shout out Serge, that I am a Clippers fan. I am not a Clippers fan. I just want to address that real quick. I don't like the Clippers. I actually think they have I'm not going to root for Marcus Morris. I think they have a roster full of players who are pretty unlikable. I have a lot of respect for the Clippers and the way that they've played, and I've had a lot of faith in them up until this point, even throughout the playoffs when they've gone down 2-0 in multiple series. So it's not that I'm a Clippers fan. It's that I think this is going to be a really good series because of the coaching matchups. And so to go back to Ty Lue, there are other coaches in the playoffs, Frank Vogel being one of them, who never would have made the adjustments that Ty Lue made in the last series with his minutes rotation. And would, as a result, like if the Clippers didn't stop playing Kennard and Zubac as much as they did throughout the last series against Utah, they would have been sent home. But here's the stats. Kennard, in the first 3 games of that series, he played 19 minutes per game. In the last 3 games, he scaled back to 13. Zubac played 16 minutes per game in the first 3 games. Last half of the series, he came down to 10. Yesterday, I think he played like 6 or 7. The game before that, I think he played like 8 minutes. He is barely playing at this point, and Kennard is barely playing at this point, and that's because Ty Lue has made the adjustments he's had to make. He's been a very good coach throughout the playoffs so far, something that not everyone does. Vogel wouldn't do it. Budenholzer wouldn't do it. So there's a reason the Clippers are still here. But to go back to the initial point, Kennard is your Michael Porter Jr. in this series. We saw the Jazz, they would try to run multiple actions in order to get the switch that they wanted against Kennard. It worked with a relative amount of success whenever he touched the floor, but ultimately they were doing it like they were running guys like Joe Ingles, Bogdanovich at him, sometimes Donovan Mitchell. Remember, Mike Conley was out for much of that series. So the Jazz weren't able to exploit that mismatch in a way that I think the Suns, if they have both Chris Paul and Devin Booker, will be able to do. They will be able to exploit the Luke Kennard mismatch. That's a guy, there's an example, Mike, of a guy where Devin Booker does have the strength advantage. Remember, he doesn't have the strength advantage against Batum. He doesn't have it against Marcus Morris. But a guy against Kennard, Kennard's a 3-course meal. He can attack Kennard. Chris Paul can attack Kennard in space. So that is going to be a guy where, if he plays 15 minutes per game versus playing 6 minutes per game because Ty Lue knows he just can't put him out there, that's going to make a big difference for the Suns. And then to go down to your big man with Zubac is designed to give the Clippers sort of the traditional look. He gives you the physicality of a normal big man, the rebounding, the lob, not quite a lob threat, but the pick and roll threat and all that. But they often have to play a traditional drop coverage. And we know from the last series, what do the Suns do to drop coverages? They destroy them. They destroy them. So those 2 guys are going to be the guys where it's like when they're in the game, and I don't anticipate that they will be in the game in the starting lineup, at least initially. When they come on the court, it's going to be eyes locked onto them. Those are your guys who, like, if you want to go get Chris Paul a bucket, start out in your elbow set, run a couple cross screens, pitch it back to Chris Paul, and make sure Luke Kennard is the one who's guarding him at that point with like 15 seconds, 10 seconds left on the shot clock. Go to work. You can do that a bunch of times in a series of moves the way you did it to MPJ and have great success. So those are the guys where you're effectively trying to play them off the court. And I think Lue is a guy who will actually make those adjustments. Like if he sees that Kennard is just being destroyed, he will stop playing him. But then he's in a situation where if he can't play Kennard more than 8 minutes, if he can't play Zubac more than 8 minutes because the Suns are destroying those matchups, he barely has any depth. And now he has to rely on Paul George, Batum, Morris, Terrence Mann, all of those guys for 40-plus minutes every night. And the Suns may be able... Remember, the Suns are coming off a week of rest. The Clippers just played yesterday. If all those guys for the Clippers also have to sustain 40-plus minutes per game this entire series... As it stretches on, as the series drags on, if it does, the Suns will also be at a major rest advantage. So you're trying to target those guys as much as you can.
Yeah, the Clippers have basically played every other day for 2 months straight. So that's going to matter too. And Sam, the one thing that worries me about what you just said, first of all, that's you're spot on with all of that. And the way I worded it was, who does Chris Paul pick on? Because that's what I'm concerned with as well. I had the exact question. I use Chris Paul as an example because of how relentless he is, and I think even his isolations are sort of the most brutal with who he ISOs against. But what worries me about what you said is those are bench players. Those are bench players ultimately, so they have the option to just not play them that much. Zubac, I think my note says obviously Zubac. That's the obvious one, and I think Kennard is a great example too. I almost forgot he was on that team. By the way, did you know Yogi Ferrell was on their team?
I had no idea.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
What if we see
found that out today?
What if we see like Boogie this series? There's no way, right?
it'd be really. I hope we do.
He played like
Let's say that.
he played like 12 minutes total, maybe at the beginning of the Jazz series, and then Lou was like, "Yeah, we can't do that." So might be interesting.
Yeah, Lou makes great adjustments as series goes on. Once again, another reason to try to really put it on them to start. Out of the starters, let me preface this by saying, especially for new listeners, I think that defensive stats, tracking stats, are mostly dumb, and that you can't really quantify defense in a lot of ways because so much of it is about making players and teams do things that they don't want to do. It's not necessarily just who shoots it and what percentage they shoot when they shoot it. It's just there's so much more nuance to it. But
it's a lot easier. Just to jump in real quick. It's a lot easier to make up defensive stats that talk about reacting versus those that talk about dictating. It's basically impossible to come up with a way to quantify how you're dictating a defense, right? But reacting, that's really easy.
Yeah, I think Mikal Bridges is the best example. Mikal Bridges, his defensive stats this year just aren't really what you would expect them to be for how good he is as a defender. And I think one of the things that he does better than almost anybody is he makes star players do things they don't want to do. They might score when they do them, but taking teams out of what their plan is something that he is the best at. And by the way, who he guards is going to be interesting, but we'll talk about that later. First, the player on... I still looked it up because I was still curious to see who the player in the starting lineup was for the Clippers that had the worst defensive field goal percentage. So this is a percentage of when he's the primary defender, who shoots the best. The players in the other team shoot the best against this defender. And that was actually Nicholas Batum, which I think is not necessarily surprising. It's just that he's still very long, and he's, 6'7", 6'8"? He's not exactly someone that you're going to pick on a lot, but I think he's going to be that guy. In my mind, I still think of the least disciplined defender that they're going to be facing, whether that be Terrence Mann, who's likely going to play a lot of minutes in this series because he's a rookie. He's just been really good and really solid. I tend to think it's going to be Marcus Morris, and I picture Chris Paul and Devin Booker trying to bait Marcus Morris just off of his feet as much as possible to try to get those fouls from him.
Yeah.
So as far as switches goes, I think they're going to likely attack him a lot in this series out of the starters. Now, I think you're exactly right with Zubac and Kennard off the bench. And even, I don't know, Rondo is a little bit scary too. I don't know how many minutes he's going to get, but I think Rondo is really smart as a defender. So I think in a lot of ways, you can't really trick him into doing things that he doesn't want to do. He's just going to stay on his feet and stay solid, not get off his feet. So yeah, I think you're right about those guys. But when I look at it, I think those are the guys that Chris Paul is going to pick on. Well, Batum could be the guy, though. I mean, I don't know. Based on this stat, I just doubt it.
You also can't underrate, when it comes to Rondo, his ability to just be fueled by pure hatred for Chris Paul. That could give him a little level up in the playoffs, so we'll see. I'm not really worried. If they want to play Rondo, they can play Rondo. That kind of defeats the purpose of their 5-out switch everything with big guys scheme, Like at that point, they're sort of conceding, oh shit, we need a playmaker on the floor who can make a cross-court pass. We don't have one right now, so let's bring Rondo in the game. I see that as a win for the Suns, honestly. I think what you just said, you didn't mention his name, but I think is a really good time if we're going to shoehorn him into the conversation. Cam Payne.
I have a question for that. You want me to read it?
Yeah, sure, read it.
I have, who will have a bigger impact, Terrence Mann or Cam Payne? This is my question on that.
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, no, I could just cover this real quick and then I'll let you go because I think both of those guys have been really interesting for both teams so far. Terrence Mann, I think, has started some games, has come off the bench for some games. Cameron Payne, obviously, off the bench for every game so far. If Chris Paul misses a game, Cameron Payne is the obvious starter. Just to compare some stats, Terrence Mann, 7.2 points per game. Cameron Payne, 10.2 points per game, so obviously a little more there. Cameron Payne is also more of a facilitator. Mann is more of a shooting guard in his role. That means that Payne is 3 assists per game to his 0.6. But it's difficult to compare these stats without just acknowledging that he was the best player. Terrence Mann was the best player for the Clippers in a closeout game. And the heights that he can reach are so high for the Clippers that containing him, mind you, the Jazz, not great perimeter defense. That's very important in this conversation. But the heights that he can reach are so high for the Clippers that we need Cameron Payne to somehow exceed that on a regular basis in order for the Suns to win a lot of games in this series, I think.
No doubt. So I just have a note here that says Cameron Payne can be the Suns' second leading scorer at least until Chris Paul comes back in this series. I don't know exactly how many minutes he's going to be playing, if he's going to be pushing 40 or only 25 or 30, just kind of to get an additional point guard out there with Devin Booker. But regardless, you look at the Clippers and the way they're constructed, and to go back to what you were talking about with their switch, Marcus Morris, for instance, as a matchup. If you can get by the initial first wave of defense, they have no rim protection when Zubats isn't in the game. That's the obvious advantage you have here. So the Suns, we have to understand, the Suns are a good jump shooting team. The Clippers are a terrific jump shooting team. You're not going to win this series, at least most times, just by going tick for tack jump shots. You're not. You need to take advantage of the fact that they have no rim protection. The guy to do that, at least while Chris Paul is out, is Cam Payne. Cam Payne in the playoffs, averaging, I have it pulled up here in one tab, he's averaging 8 drives per game in only 20 minutes. That's by third on the Suns, and it is by far ahead of the guy who comes in fourth at Mikal Bridges, averaging 3 drives per game. No surprise there, but he needs to really take advantage. I mean, he has a major speed advantage over someone like Marcus Morris, over someone like Nick Batum, if he can work those switches within the Suns' half-court offense. And Cam Payne, he's a bit of a finesse finisher. I think we've seen that in the past. He's not like a guy who will just jump into your body and really try to initiate contact. But if he breaks past that first wave of defense, the guys who are going to be coming out and contesting him at the rim, he doesn't have to worry about. He can just go up and under, and he'll be able to finish a really good percentage at the rim in this series, I think. So Cam Payne, whether he's starting or on the bench, and I do think he'll initially start, but eventually he'll go back to his old role, he needs to be aggressive every single minute he plays. He needs to push the pace. Like I talked about earlier, we need someone out there trying to find DeAndre Ayton early in the shot clock. Payne needs to be that guy, but he also has to understand that he's looking for his own shot, because if he can get to the rim, and he's one of the only guys on the Suns roster who can do this, he should have a field day kind of with what they're able to give him.
Yeah, I think the dynamics that he brings in attacking are so different than Chris Paul's, because Chris Paul is just so crafty and kind of slow in his attack, just very methodical, whereas Cameron Payne will just get it on a switch back up and just go right at you up and down. And he can find guys off that, because if that second guy comes, it's not just about attacking that second guy. Rotating the ball and finding the shooters in that point. This is what I talk about when a guy draws a second defender. That's how the Suns gain an advantage, because the purpose of a screen and roll, right, is to get a defender out of position when the screens aren't working and you have to attack one-on-one. And if you bring that second defender in attacking one-on-one, that's when the ball gets rotating to the right guy, and that's how the Suns get open shots off of assists, which is what they prefer over isolations.
Just the easiest way to describe what you were talking about, Chris Paul is an east to west finisher. He's got that little stutter step and then kind of goes off to the side with the right elbow. We know that's his favorite shot. Cam Payne's a north-south guy all the way. And arguably, I wouldn't say he's better than Devin Booker at this. I wouldn't say that. But he's definitely a solid number 2 behind Booker as an option in this series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say so. Well, I don't remember. I guess I went last with the or Payne question. By the way, Terrence Mann, finding ways to is Mikal Bridges just going to be on Terrence Mann to start this series with Jay Crowder on PG? Like, is that where we're at with Terrence Mann and how he's been playing? Just try to shut him down completely with Mikal Bridges? I think that's a possibility.
I think Mikal is best as a point of attack defender. And actually, did you watch the interview he just did with Duncan Robinson?
I haven't finished that yet, no. I saw some clips online, but that's it. I'm excited to listen.
It's actually great. It's by far, I will praise these guys' podcasts, both Duncan's and JJ Redick's, as just like, you need to go listen to them anytime they have a player on if you're interested in getting perspectives from various NBA guys, because they get things out of guys that they just don't give to media. Mikal,
more basketball stuff, yeah.
Exactly. Mikal, from being at Villanova for 4 years, is very well media trained. I don't blame him for this at all. But when you're trying to talk to him as just like a reporter, he's not going to give you, he's just not going to give you much. He says a lot of platitudes. When he's talking to Duncan Robinson, he really opens up. And so one thing he was saying, Mikal's a very humble, nice dude. So he was saying, actually, a player, the types of players he hates guarding, he was like, actually, I hate guarding you and JJ. I hate chasing guys around screens the entire time. I like when the ball is in front of me and I can keep the ball in front, which, based on kind of the role he's played all season, I actually think he's your guy on PG. and maybe you deal with Terrence Mann later if you have to. But that it's a really interesting conversation for sure.
Yeah, I have something next on that, but I think that he did really well on Michael Porter Jr. I mean, just if he doesn't like guarding those guys, he still did well against it. But I always reference this game in the bubble where he had to guard Duncan Robinson and he just couldn't stay in front of him. And they had to put Javon Carter on. That's what they eventually did. The Clippers have really nobody like that. They just don't really play like that. They're more of a spot up team. Guys don't really run off screens too often to do that. So
before you get too much into that, this is hitting on my next point. So
Perfect.
Next question. Can the Suns perimeter defenders do what they're paid to do? Ultimately, there is a reason that the Suns are constructed the way that they are, and there's a reason the Jazz just went home in the second round. And if you take everything else away from these teams, you've got Donovan Mitchell versus Devin Booker, there's slight differences. You've got DeAndre Ayton, Rudy Gobert, there's slight differences. Where we have a major difference in the way these teams are constructed and what can save the Suns at the end of the day. If you were watching the last couple games of Utah Clippers, there's a lot of people hate Rudy Gobert. I get it. Everyone's getting off their takes about Defensive Player of the Year, whatever. But if you're just watching Joe Ingles and Bojan Bogdanovic and those sorts of guys, even Donovan Mitchell was terrible, try to keep the ball in front on the perimeter against the Clippers, even last night after Kawhi Leonard went down. It was a pitiful job by the perimeter defenders of Utah that put Rudy Gobert definitely has his deficiencies, but it put him in a really tough position. Put him in a really tough position where he had to choose between guarding the corner, which was Terrence Mann, that was the guy they had on him, or protecting the rim. DeAndre Ayton is going to be important on defense, as he always is, but the perimeter guys for Phoenix, they need to help him out. Jay Crowder, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and Torrey Craig, all four of them. This is why you guys are paid. This is why you're here in this series, because you're going into it with the understanding that, and I think, for the record, I think the Clippers believe this about the Suns too. Both teams know that if the opposing offense gets you to, they force you to scramble around and they get you out in rotations and they keep finding open spot up shot after open spot up shot, you're done. You're dead in the water. That's how that happens. The Clippers are, or actually I'll just start here. The Suns are the second best team at making corner threes in the NBA this season. They shot 43% in the regular season. That was very good. The Clippers, and I mentioned this on the pod before, one of the best corner three-point shooting teams of all time, at least for as far back as tracking data goes that we know. They shot 47% on corner threes this season with guys like Batum, with guys like Mann, with guys like Marcus Morris. They love to get you out, drive and kick, penetrate, and then find the open man, swing it around, and that's how they're going to kill you. From a mathematical perspective, what you are trying to do in this series is take all of these spot-up shots, because the Clippers are a jump shooting team. They don't put a whole lot of pressure on the rim, although Paul George will do his best. But generally speaking, they don't put a whole lot of pressure on the rim. They're a jump shooting team. You're trying to take all of these spot-up shots, all of these corner threes that the Clippers shoot 40-45% on, take as many of them as possible away from them, and turn those into difficult pull-up threes with a hand in their face, where now maybe it becomes a 30-35% shot. That's much easier said than done, but that's essentially what you're trying to do. And in order to do that, you need to stay home on shooters. In order to do that, you need the guys at the point of attack, Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, to keep the ball in front. That's going to be the most important thing. You just need to take away their initial looks as they're trying to run their offense. Those first 5-10 seconds of every half-court possession are going to be critical. And inevitably, Paul George is going to do his thing. There are going to be breakdowns, because there always are. No perimeter defender can be perfect at this 100% of the time. There are going to be breakdowns. Sometimes Ayton's going to be guarding a shooter on the corner, and they'll get an open layup or an open dunk.
Almost all the time.
But here's the thing, and now everyone's going to go to Twitter and they're going to say, well, Ayton should have been there, or why isn't Ayton protecting the rim like he normally does? It all starts with the perimeter defenders. Okay. They need to keep the ball in front at the point of the attack, and it's just so critical to what they need to do this series.
The way I worded this question, because we clearly both were going to hit on the same thing here, is do the Suns need to double Paul George? That's how I worded it, and this is why I think it's going to be Jay Crowder on Paul George from the start. The Suns, I talked about it earlier, were number one in isolations at points per possession in a small number of those. Well, the Clippers are number one by a lot in spot-ups at 1.3 points per possession. A lot. They're guys just stand around the three-point line, and then they have one of Reggie Jackson, Terrence Mann, or Paul George trying to break down their defenders and then swinging the ball to corners. Actually, pretty similar in a lot of ways to when Chris Paul does his thing as well. Just Chris Paul is so much better at it. And I think this is why it's important to to not double, right? You almost, in a way, are going to try to play the Clippers because they only have one star, really, on their team at this point, the way the Suns played the Nuggets, in that they just put DeAndre Ayton on Nikola Jokic, and they said, all right, do your thing. We're going to lock down shooters on the perimeter, and if Jokic scores, just make it as difficult as possible for him to score. And I think if you put Jay Crowder on someone other than Paul George, if you put Mikal Bridges on Paul George, what do you have? Do you have Jay Crowder chasing around Reggie Jackson? That, to me, that doesn't make sense. I think in a lot of ways, if you have another guard, that whoever is the hot guard coming around screens, the guy that's really putting pressure on the rim, like Reggie Jackson or like Terrence Mann, whoever it is in the specific game, to me, that's got to be Mikal Bridges guarding those guys. And you try to use Jay Crowder to contain the penetration as much as possible with Paul George because he's got the strength to do it, right? You take away any strength advantage, which he used really well against Royce O'Neal or whoever else was guarding him. Bad defenders, I think, I'm going to reiterate, bad defenders. I said this on Twitter. Royce O'Neal is probably the best perimeter defender on the Jazz. I think I might put him 4th or 5th on the Suns. Like, he might only get 5-6 minutes a game on the Suns.
He needs to be in like the Torrey Craig, Cam Johnson role. He's a good player and he's on a good contract, but he's being asked to do too much. Yeah, for sure. Can I just say, you just changed my mind, I think, on what the matchups are. I think Jay Crowder, you definitely just changed my mind. It's not Mikal. Jay Crowder should be on Paul George. Mikal Bridges starts on Reggie Jackson. Yeah. That's what you're doing. Because let me just
makes the most sense.
Let me throw this stat at you. So during the regular season, not during the regular season, during the playoffs, up until Kawhi got injured, here's how the Clippers' penetration stats looked. Their drives per game. Kawhi, and this is why they're so difficult to guard, right? That the bicameral, 2-star system. Kawhi averaged 16 drives per game. PG averaged 16 drives per game. Who's after that? You've got a steep drop off to Reggie Jackson at 6. Who's after that? You've got like Rondo at 4. You've got Marcus Morris at 3. Nick Batum at like 2.5, stuff like that. But, in general, not a lot for those guys. What did it look like last night when the Clippers were in desperation mode without Kawhi? And obviously they came back and won. PG upped his load. 22 drives in a single game for Paul George, which for a guy who really likes to shoot is massive. Reggie Jackson stepped up huge to 18. Nobody else had more than 4. The guys at the point of attack, your best defenders, are Jay Crowder and Mikal Bridges. Those are the guys that you need to deny penetration. Jay Crowder's got the strength advantage, so he goes on Paul George. Mikal harasses Reggie Jackson. He's got a massive height, massive wingspan advantage there. And if you can check those two guys successfully, no one else is going to beat you.
And I think this is where a secondary rotation by the Suns is going to be vital for them, because if DeAndre Ayton is camped out in the corner, guarding a guy in the corner, and say Paul George does find a way to break down Jay Crowder and get to the rim or get close to the rim, and DeAndre Ayton does come out on that rotation and guards the rim, now it's on the rest of the team, and this is something I think the Jazz were bad at once again. It's on the rest of the team to scramble to the shooters and trust that DeAndre Ayton has the rim on his own, and make sure that they get out to the shooters so that when that ball rotates, at the very least, it's going to be a contested shot instead of a wide open shot. Because that secondary rotation, once, say, the Paul George gets by Jay Crowder, DeAndre Ayton comes off the corner, then whoever's guarding the player on the wing on that strong side where the ball's going to swing to has to drop to the corner. Now Jay Crowder is sprinting out to the wing, right? And then they have that covered. DeAndre Ayton is there. Maybe at that point, Paul George backs DeAndre Ayton up. Then you trust DeAndre Ayton to guard one-on-one in that situation. But that secondary rotation is going to be really important.
Yeah, you're talking about X-outs and stuff like that right now. One guy goes to the corner, next guy goes up to the wing. That's how you cut it off in the most efficient way possible. The Suns have been pretty good at that all season, so I'm not super worried.
Very good. And in fact, they did really well, I think, in the Nuggets series at doing that.
Again, bottom line here defensively, let Paul George take his 12, 13, 14 threes a game. Let him try to beat you driving to the rim. If he drops 40, if he drops 50 in some games, you tip your cap to him if they end up winning. But this Clippers team is nothing like the teams the Suns have played so far. The Suns played a bum-ass shooting, literally a bum-ass shooting team in the Lakers. That was easy mode in terms of guarding the way the Suns guarded the Lakers because they just didn't have the shooters around. They played a good shooting team in Denver, but still not an elite one. And now they're playing, maybe with the exception of Brooklyn, arguably, like Brooklyn at full strength, they're playing arguably the best shooting team in the NBA, even without Kawhi. That's how good their shooters have been this year. So stay home.
I'm glad you mentioned that too, because the Lakers did go small against the Suns, and the Suns absolutely picked apart their defense. So I think in one way it does matter, in that the Suns played really well offensively against that small lineup. But the difference is the Clippers are so much better offensively in their small lineups, where the Lakers did not have the firepower against it to counteract what the Suns were doing against it. So I think in one way it does matter, in that the Suns were prepared and did a really good job against the small Lakers lineup. So I trust that they have the right plays in mind to attack the Clippers' small ball lineup. But defensively, it's an entirely different thing. So that's a great point.
You use that word firepower. That's my final question. Do the Clippers have enough of it? And it's a little bit silly, I understand, to say that after they went off like they did yesterday, but also we just know the Suns' defense can be so much better at the things we just talked about than Utah's. Do the Clippers have enough firepower to get over the hump if the Suns can cut off the other options and let Paul George feast? What do you think?
Well, I'll say this. I'd be surprised if Terrence Mann had another career night against the Phoenix Suns. I'd be shocked.
He's very much like the Lou Dort of this playoffs, right?
Yeah, or I think somebody compared him to Tyler Hero, and I thought that was a good way of describing it, because Tyler Hero last year in the bubble had his moments as well. It's how much do you count on that against a better defensive team? Once again, the Jazz just don't have the perimeter defenders. They don't have the right guys to do that. I think Terrence Mann is going to be in an interesting position, because it might be Chris Paul or Devin Booker guarding him. And like, how much can he punish those guys if those guys are the ones guarding him? But I'd be shocked if he goes off for 37 or whatever it was against the Phoenix Suns again. Like, they had to win that game. You have to win the games where a rookie like that has a career night, and they did. And I don't know. The Jazz defense did not impress me. And I think the Suns are going to do a much better job. So I'm not sure that they do. I think the Suns are favored in this series by a lot of odds makers, and I think that's right. Like, I think they should be favored in this series. In a lot of ways, not to do some narrative building here, but in a lot of ways, the Suns win and people say, yeah, they should win, or they lose and it's an absolute embarrassment because Kawhi wasn't there. So, the Suns should win this series in a lot of ways, but Ty Lue's a very good coach, and Paul George really doesn't like Devin Booker and tends to play very well against him. And same with Rajon Rondo and Chris Paul. So, there's a lot of incentive for these guys to sort of play much better than they normally do, not to mention just the prospect of making the NBA Finals. I don't know that they do.
I mean, I think the Suns are favored here. We know that much. But I think the Clippers pose a defensive challenge that we just haven't seen before. I mean, we've seen before in the regular season, and Suns fans bitched about it like all night long, the couple of times we've played defenses like this. Plus, some people have pointed out on Twitter that the Clippers aren't just switching. They are switching, but they can switch, they can drop, they can trap, they can show, they can play zone, which they've done in stretches. They're also, especially if it's just Devin Booker coming out, it's not just like Devin Booker, you have to hit ISO shots and figure out the switch. It could be, okay, now your next time down, they're going to high show you, and the next time down, they wouldn't drop on him, but hey, maybe we're running a zone now. Like, Devin Booker is gonna
box.
He's gonna continue. That's an interesting idea, to box and one Devin Booker
without Chris Paul. Actually, that they might do it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think our shooters would prevail through that. I'm not sure, but it's going to be tough for Devin Booker just in terms of figuring out the defensive coverages that they throw at him consistently throughout this series, because that's going to be the challenge it poses. And ultimately, what I've said all along is that I was worried about the Clippers because I was worried that they would be able to take the Phoenix Suns out of, remember I just did this YouTube video on this, take them out of their identity, their central identity on offense. And it would confuse fans because fans would be saying, why don't we look like we're running our usual stuff? Why don't we have that typical identity? We're just relying on Devin Booker ISOs right now. We're just relying on tough shots. Is that sustainable throughout the course of a series? I think the Clippers, when they're playing at their best, are going to be able to do that to us. And as Suns fans, we're just going to have to sit back and find out. But I do think our defense and what we can do to them as a depleted team is also going to be very impressive. And so ultimately, like you said at the beginning of the episode, maybe we're in store for a low-scoring series, and a low-scoring series where the Suns are favored at that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the Suns have the right defensive personnel to do this. It's going to be fascinating to see, I think, the role that Ayton plays, where we started. Obviously, hopefully, Chris Paul gets back. Maybe by the time you're listening to this, you have a good idea of when he's coming back. Once again, our plan is to record after every game in this series. So for most of you listening to this, we'll be back tomorrow after the game.
Maybe we'll do a Spaces too. Bring those.
Yeah,
back.
we like to go on pregame too online. So follow us on Twitter if you don't already, and we'll give you some pregame stuff, especially when we get some more information. Let's get this one out there, Sam. People need some time to listen to this.
Right.
So thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back soon.
Suns in 4.
For over a century, Johnny Walker has shared its bold spirit with the game of golf. Now, crafted with Devereaux Golf, Johnny Walker introduces the Johnny Walker Blue Label-inspired Sunday Golf Bag, elevating the game with sleek design, Blue Label hues, and refined gold accents. Celebrate your hole-in-one with a premium Sunday bag crafted by Devereaux Golf. Submit proof of your achievement to JohnnyWalker.com/blue-in-1. Please drink responsibly.